I welcome you all to Group 1 mains classes conducted by TSAT of Telangana government on paper 4 Indian Economy and Development. Today's topic is Planning in Indian Economy. The contents of today's topic are like this. We'll start with the objectives, priorities and strategies of the 5-year plans. Then critical evaluation, where we will speak about the achievements of the 5-year plans in India. 12th 5-year plan, the concept of inclusive growth and Planning Commission versus the Niti Aayog, a comparative study between the Planning Commission, the defunct Planning Commission and the recently established Niti Aayog. What is economic planning? Economic planning is, before going to economic planning, exactly what actually is planning and how do we define planning? Planning is a technique, it's a methodology, a means to an end, the end being the realization of certain predetermined and well-defined aims and objectives. For attaining development and growth for the purpose of, growth being the concept of the developed countries and development being the concern of the developing countries, both the developed and developing countries continuously have to move on their respective paths. In order to move on, they have to prepare certain objectives and aims. These objectives and aims must be predetermined and they should be well defined. There should be clarity pertaining to the type of objectives that are essential to maintain a stable development and growth. So, planning under this process is a kind of technique. It helps as a means to achieve this particular end, and that end being attainment of certain predetermined and well-defined aims and objectives. Next is rationale for planning. Why in India we have gone for planning since 1950 or earlier days of independence? The first rationale here is, or the reason is, limitations of the market mechanism. In the early days of independence, we were left with capitalistic system where the markets used to play a dominant role in the determination of the prices in the economic system. All the economic activities were left to the market forces of demand and supply. But this market mechanism has had number of limitations or lacuna in the form of different economic problems prevailing like poverty, unemployment, injustice, social unrest, unequal distribution of income and agony amongst the laborers for not getting proper employment opportunities, and more was the backwardness of the Indian economy. So, understanding these limitations prevailing in India because of the operation of the market mechanism, the government has gone for planning as a methodology to move from the market mechanism to a socialistic kind of society. And the second one here is the need of social justice. For the purpose of providing social justice in the society, the planning was adopted as a rationale. Resource mobilization and resource allocation. For mobilizing the resources for development process, for allocating of these resources for different objectives and aims, planning was adopted as a means by the government in the early days of independence. Coming to the characteristic features of Indian planning. What are the features of Indian planning? Indian planning had 3 important special characteristic features. The first one is indicative economic planning. Economic planning, though, has long-term perspective plans which are where the aims and objectives have to be attained over a long period of time. Indicatively, in a short span of time, different targets were given and these targets were indicated to get fulfilled during the specified time limit. So, this is called as indicative economic planning. For example, if overall economic growth rate increase of India is kept as a long run perspective plan, for the purpose of attainment of this long run perspective plan, in between short run goals were also kept, and the fulfillment of these short run goals in between was called as indicative economic planning. Attainment of a long run perspective growth and combined with fulfillment of short run goals is called as indicative economic planning. The second one is physical planning. Physical planning is different from the financial planning because under financial planning, we just try to allocate the financial resources for the attainment or fulfillment of different objectives. But here physical planning refers to the authorities responsible for the preparation and implementation of the plans has taken utmost care and attention towards how much men have to be allocated. I mean to say, what should be the labor force to be allocated, what is the material that has to be allocated, what is the power, quantity of the power that has to be allocated for the purpose of attainment of different targets. This is called as physical planning. So, physical planning is nothing but physical allotment or mobilization of the resources for the fulfillment of different objectives. Social planning. The planning here was framed and implemented for the purpose of fulfillment of social objectives like equitable justice to all the sections of the population, reduction in the disparities between the rich and the poor, removal of social unrest by helping out the Indians or the backward, the Indians suffering from backwardness or suffering from poverty through provision of proper employment so that their standard of living is going to be increased. So, the planning aimed basically for the purpose of social transformation of the Indian society. Hence, it was called as social planning. These were some of the important features of Indian planning. Historical review of planning. Planning in India has started with the 1938 National Planning Committee, which has conducted a series of studies on subjects which were related to economic development. Again, an attempt was made by 8 leading industrialists in 1944 and they have prepared Bombay Plan. Same year, a Gandhian plan was prepared by 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 on the principles of Mahatma Gandhi. 1945, the People's Plan was prepared by M.N. Roy. We can see here the industrialists have prepared the Bombay Plan, keeping in view the fulfillment of certain objectives related to the business and upliftment of the society through establishment of modern industries. If you see the Gandhian plan, Mahatma Gandhi has given importance to the small scale industries and the traditional industries. So, 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 has formulated this Gandhian policy or Gandhian plan depending upon or giving more importance to the Mahatma Gandhi's policies or thought process. Then if we take M.N. Roy, he was given more importance to the general public living in India, where he has stated that the planning process should be in such a way that direct participation should be provided to the Indians belonging to different sections of the society. So, these Bombay Plan, Gandhian Plan, People's Plan, they have remained as the paper plans only without seeing the day of implementation. Then government has come up with the Planning Commission in 1950, and it's a statutory body formed out of a constitutional process. So, this Planning Commission was established to assess country's need for material capital. Then objectives of planning in India. Planning in India had so many long-term objectives. These objectives were supposed to be fulfilled over a long period of time, maybe 10 years or 15 years, something like that. So, these objectives in general can be specifically mentioned as economic growth, that is attainment of high rate of gross domestic product and per capita income so as to increase the standard of living of the general population, first objective. Self-reliance in all the sectors of the economy, because in the early days of independence, though agriculture being the primary occupation of the people, a pathetic condition developed in India where India has to import food grains from Soviet Russia under the famous agreement called as PL 480. So, being agriculturally so strong, Indian economy, when it was importing the food grains, it was a matter of prestige for the government of India because attainment of self-reliance, especially in agricultural sector, was very essential in order to feed the increasing mouths or increasing number of people, as population was already reflecting the population explosion taking place in India. Then removal of unemployment. Many Indians were suffering from the problem of unemployment. So, removing unemployment on a long run basis was also the objective of Indian planning. income inequalities were highly rampant, and wide disparities were there in the society in the form of a pocket number of rich and large number of maybe more than 90% of the Indians, they were suffering from less poverty, in the sense that their incomes were very less. So intensive income inequalities were prevailing in India. So reducing these intense income inequalities was another objective. Poverty was another important problem, and poverty has to be aimed at removal of poverty had become one of the important objectives for the purpose of removing unjust social unrest that was prevailing in the Indian society. Modernization. Since we were very much closer to the Soviet Russia, that is United States of Soviet Russia, and USSR was considered as the developed country in those days only, and Russia had a huge number of basic and key industries which were highly modernized. This concept of modernization as a long-term objective was taken, being impressed by the development process or the development which has already been attained in USSR. Inclusiveness and sustainability of the growth, including all the sections of the society, including all the sectors, that is agricultural sector, industrial sector, and even the service sector, including all the genders of the society, was called as inclusiveness in the process of growth. And after including everybody in the growth process and attaining a higher rate of economic growth, then it was another long-term objective of the Indian economic planning to have sustainability. Sustainability is to see that the same kind of economic growth is going to continue in the coming future. Coming to the next one, strategies of planning in India. We had completed 67 years of planning, and there was a noticeable metamorphosis, that is a kind of change in the process of economic growth, and the attainment of this economic growth had gone through a phase of metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is nothing but a continuous process where we have seen positive changes. So strategies of planning in India basically can be classified into two. The first two phases. The first phase is called as phase of control, that is, it is also called as license, permit, quota raj of, which was from 1950 to 1980. So this phase of control was made up of interventionist state. That is, state was intervening in all the economic activities. Heavy industries were to be developed, self-reliance, expansion of public sector, import substitution. These were the important aspects. So that is till 1980, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, for 30 long years or 3 decades. Expansion of the public sector has taken place under the phase of control. Then from 1990 onwards, we have the phase of deregulation, that is caused by the stabilization and structural adjustments already attained and due to the global trends of LPG economic reforms. So this phase of deregulation started in 1990 because in the earlier phase of control, we have attained quite satisfactory milestones in the form of improvements in economic growth, reduction in the poverty, increase in employment opportunities, increase in the per capita income of the people, reduction in the income inequalities prevailing in the society. So there was a kind of stabilization, and after the stabilization there was even structural adjustments where occupational distribution of the labor has moved in favor of the industrial sector and the service sector, and even the contribution of the national income, the contribution of the sectoral national income was also underwent a drastic transformation, where the primary sector's share in the national income has come down and the service sector share in the national income has increased. So there was structural adjustment. And because of the stabilization and structural adjustment that has taken place during the phase of control, we have gone for the next phase, that is phase of deregulation. And in this phase of deregulation, we were also influenced by the global economic trends, where World Trade Organization has come into existence, and the World Bank, for the purpose of giving loans especially to the developing countries like India, wanted to go for the introduction of the economic reforms of liberalization, privatization, globalization. So, when India wanted to become one of the recognized country in the world and to get connected to the entire world, India had to open up its borders for the other countries for free trade and free flow of goods and services and free flow of labor. So, this was a part of liberalization, privatization, globalization, and we didn't had any other option also other than opening our economies, because when the entire world was going towards this new economic reforms, India cannot become an alien country without following the footsteps of the other countries. Then coming to the planning in India, on 26 January 1950, Indian Constitution has come into force, impressed by the USSR model of planning for development. Planning Commission was set up on 15th March 1950, and we have started the planning era starting from 1951 till 2017. In the year 2017, we have completed the 12th 5-year plans. During this planning era, we have almost framed and implemented 12 5-year plans combined with certain annual plans and even the rolling plans. And these 12 5-year plans were quite successful in attaining a long-term objective of economic growth with sustainability, and also several short-term goals which were highlighted during different 5-year plans. Then after 2017, the Planning Commission got abandoned, and in the place of Planning Commission, Niti Aayog has come into existence as an apex public policy think tank of Government of India since January 1, 2015. So, what exactly is the definition of a plan by Planning Commission? Planning Commission says that plan is something which spells out how the resources of a nation should be put to use. It has some general goals as well as specific objectives which are to be achieved within a specified period of time. And it is unrealistic to expect all the goals of a plan to be given equal importance in all plans. That means each plan is going to give importance to different objectives. Then characteristics of planning, if we see, major economic decisions are determined by a central authority, that is the Planning Commission. Government will have the complete powers of implementation, and the planners fix the targets for the sectors and also decide how much investment must be made in each sector to achieve the targets. Then if we take the composition of the Planning Commission, after independence, Planning Commission was established in 1950. And the commission was instructed to fulfill the following aspects: to make an assessment of material capital and human resources of the country and formulate a plan for the most effective and balanced utilization of them. So, first important function of the Planning Commission was assessment of the material capital and human resources. That is, in India, first assessment have to be made. The quantification has to be made, how much material resources are available, how much human resources are available. After making an assessment, then a formal plan has to be formulated for the effective and balanced utilization of them. Then next is to determine the priorities. After assessment, determining the priorities, define the stages for carrying the plan and propose the allocation of resources for due completion of each stage. Then first is assessment, second is determine the priorities. Third is to act as an advisory body to the union government, determine the conditions which should be established for the execution of the plan, and to advise the center and state government. So, overall speaking, the functions of the Planning Commission can be called as to assess the resources, both the material as well as the human resources, number one. Second is to set the priorities. Third is to act as advisory body to the central government, the state government. Whoever comes for the advices from the Planning Commission, it is mandatory on the part of the Planning Commission to give advices to the central government, state government in matters related to the planning. And apart from that, for the purpose of attainment of these various priorities which are erstwhile prescribed by the Planning Commission, it is the duty of the Planning Commission to prepare the ground in the form of preparing or implementing proper conditions, establishing proper conditions, so that the priorities which are prescribed by the Planning Commission are going to be attained without any kind of disturbance. Then we have another important body, that is National Development Council. When the Planning Commission is preparing all these 5-year plans, who exactly, when these 5-year plans are going to be accepted? 5-year plans are going to be accepted and implemented only when the National Development Council supports the entire plans prepared by the Planning Commission by way of giving its 100% acceptance. So, National Development Council, all the plans made by Planning Commission have to be approved by National Development Council first. It was constituted to build cooperation between states and the Planning Commission. Like Planning Commission, the 5-year plans prepared by the Planning Commission will be implemented only when the National Development Council gives its approval and acceptance. National Development Council comprises of state planning boards, which is the apex planning body at state level, with Chief Minister as chairman, finance and planning ministers of the state and some technical members. District Planning Committee is also there, comprising both official and non-official members. This National Development Council was set up on 6th August 1952. Then timeline of the planning in India. 1934, 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 plan in his book, The Planned Economy of India. He was an engineer, ex-Diwan of Mysore, Bharat Ratna recipient. He has prepared the first plan, 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 plan. 1938, Nehru's Congress plan. 44, Bombay plan. 44, Sriman Narayan's Agarwal's Gandhian plan. 45, M.N. Roy's People's Plan. 1950, Jayaprakash Narayan's 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 plan. 1950, March 15, Cabinet Resolution to form Planning Commission. 52, National Development Council made by Cabinet Resolution for giving approval to the implementation of the 5-year plans. 2014, Planning Commission has stopped its existence. In the place of Planning Commission since 2015, we have the Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India. Quickly, 5-year plans in India and different themes, models and targets. If you take the first 5-year plan, 51 to 56, it followed the Harod-Domar model. Main focus was agriculture, irrigation and power. More GDP growth rate was received when compared with the targeted growth rate. Second plan, 56 to 61, P.C. Mahalanobis model, socialist model, rapid industrialization, heavy industries. Third plan, 61 to 66, Sukhumai Chakravarti and Sandy, also called as Gadgil Yojana, failed to achieve its target due to droughts and wars with Pakistan, China. Then we had 3 years of holidays, that is plan holiday, 66 to 69, and this holiday was declared due to after the failure of the third 5-year plan, which is called as epic fail. Fourth 5-year plan, 69 to 74, Ashok Rudra Alon Mane, a growth with stability and self-reliance. Garibi Hatao came here, an epic fail due to Bangladeshi refugee problem and drought. Fifth plan, 74 to 79, it was 10-year long-term perspective plan with focus on poverty removal and self-reliance. Rolling plan, 78 to 80. Sixth plan, poverty removal. Seventh plan, focused on employment, Jawahar Rozgar Yojana started in 7th plan. So, 6th and 7th plan, more importance was given to the poverty removal and creation of employment opportunities. Then second time, the annual plans were implemented in 89-90 because of the political instability that was there at the center. In 89-91, we did not had political stability in the country. We had an important economic problem of balance of payments. That is, during this period, the Gulf War has taken place, and during the time of the Gulf War, suddenly per barrel of petrol has become costly. So, whatever foreign exchange reserves were there, we were trying to purchase this petrol at a very high rate. Secondly, we were getting more number of imports from different countries of the world. There was a huge flow of imports, and we were supposed to purchase so many commodities as imports. This also has drained our foreign exchange reserves. So, there was huge inflation in the country. On political front, there was not a charismatic and challenging kind of prime minister who is going to make the Indian economy to roll back to the normal stage. Under these circumstances only, P.V. Narasimha Rao has was elected as the Prime Minister of the country, and Manmohan Singh Garu, who is very well known for his for the introduction of the economic reforms. Under his regime, we have gone for economic reforms in the form of liberalization, privatization, globalization. Then later we have gone for the 8th plan from 92 to 97. The model was John W. Miller model was followed. P.V. Narasimha Rao LPG reforms. 9th plan 97 to 2, growth with social justice and equity. It was mostly indicative planning. 10th plan 2002 to 2007, 8% GDP growth rate, double per capita income in 10 years. Speciality about 11th and 12th plan is 11th plan from 2007 to 2012. The theme was inclusive growth has been introduced into the Indian economic scenario through this 11th plan. C. Rangarajan framed it with targets 8 to 10% growth rate, 70 million new jobs, lower infant mortality rate, child mortality rate. Then 12th plan from 12 to 17, theme was faster, more inclusive and sustainable growth. Target growth rates were 9% GDP, 4% growth rate in agricultural sector, 10% growth rate in manufacturing, reduction of poverty from 28% in 11th 5-year plan to 10% in 12th plan, creating 50 million new jobs, get infant mortality rate to 26, maternal mortality rate to 1000, child sex ratio to 950, then increase mean school years, forest cover, infrastructure investment, rural tele-density. Then we have the same objectives. If you see the growth rate in 5-year plans, the blue color indicates the targeted growth rate and the red color here indicates the actual growth rate. All the 5-year plans starting from the first 5-year plan to 12th 5-year plan, we can see that the targeted growth rate was very high, but the actual growth rate is less. That means there is a great deviation between what we have seen as a dream, but what we have really attained. This is about the differences between the targeted growth rates and the actual growth rates which were fulfilled. Niti Aayog replacing Planning Commission. Niti Aayog or National Institution for Transforming India, Aayog is the policy think tank of Government of India that replaces Planning Commission and aims to involve the states in economic planning policy making in India. It has Union Government has announced the formation of Niti Aayog on 1st January 2015. The chairperson was the Prime Minister of Narendra Modi. Vice chairperson was Arvind Panagaria and the Chief Executive Officer was Sindhushree Kullar IAS. So, Chief Executive Officer is a new kind of post which is created under the Niti Aayog, and the CEO is appointed directly by the Prime Minister of the country. Objectives of Niti Aayog: to evolve a shared vision of national development priorities, sectors and strategies with the active involvement of states in the light of national objectives. A people, proactive and participative development agenda is the guiding principle behind Niti Aayog. So, basically speaking, the Niti Aayog has come into existence for the purpose of giving more and more importance to the states in the matter of policy formulation. This is about the Niti Aayog composition. Chairperson is the Prime Minister, ex officio members, maximum 4 from Council of Ministers nominated by the Prime Minister, part-time members, maximum 2 rotational from relevant institutions, full-time members are also will be there. Special invitees also will be there under Niti Aayog like experts, specialists, practitioners with domain knowledge. Chief Executive Officer is appointed by the Prime Minister for fixed tenure. Then critical evaluation of the planning, which is a very important topic which definitely is going to be asked by the examiners, especially the UPSC as well as even the State Public Service Commissions also. If you take the achievements, we have attained higher growth rate. So, overall growth rate during the planning period or planning era basically was 4.8%, which was may not be very high, but still okay, it is good. It's may not be satisfactory. What actually we have targeted could not be realized, but yes, we have moved from a lower growth rate to a higher growth rate. Then growth of economic infrastructure. Roadways network has increased from 4 lakh kilometers to 3 million kilometers. Railway route length also increased. We have made considerable improvement in civil aviation and even shipping also. We have developed several basic and capital goods industries. We have notified higher growth of agricultural sector. Food production growth rate increased when compared with the population growth rate. We have attained self-sufficiency in agriculture by utilizing biochemical growth revolution, which has ended the food crisis in the form of green revolution. The savings rate increased, investment rate increased, domestic savings ratio increased from 10% to 34.8% during the planning period. Gross domestic capital formation also increased to 36%. When domestic capital formation increases to 33%, it becomes a characteristic of a developed country, which by 2007, when we have attained the gross capital formation ratio to percentage to 36%, it denotes that we are on the path of moving towards the status of becoming a developed country. But along with the achievements, there are even failures also pertaining to the planning. The first failure was inadequate growth rate, which was good but not satisfactory. We have withered away India's socialistic society in the course of time, and we have moved from the socialistic pattern of development to capitalistic pattern of development since economic reforms of 1991. Economic inequality and social injustice, another important failure. The 5-year plans, instead of reducing the inequalities, have increased the economic inequalities, and social unrest still prevails in the Indian society. Unemployment is at its highest level even today also. The job seekers have increased from 363 lakhs to 406 lakhs in 2006. If you come to the 12th 5-year plan, the government approved the 12th 5-year plan that sets average growth rate at 8.2%. Theme was faster, sustainable, more inclusive growth. It could aim at 9.0 to 9.5% growth rate. Better performance in agriculture is required for more inclusive growth. Faster creation of jobs, especially in manufacturing, stronger efforts at health, education, infrastructure, special plans for backward regions. These were the strategic challenges of 12th plan. Challenges include enhancing the capacity for the growth, enhancing skills and faster generation of employment, managing the environment, markets for efficiency inclusion, decentralization, empowerment and information, technology and innovation, securing the energy future for India, accelerated development of transport infrastructure, rural transformation and sustainable agricultural growth, managing urbanization, improved access to quality education, better preventive and curative health care. In 12th 5-year plan, basically 4 important concepts have revolutionized the Indian economy. The first one was inclusive growth. The second one, which has become quite serious and at the at the level of implementation with policymakers. Second was empowerment of different downtrodden sections of the society, especially the women empowerment. Third one was equal opportunities to be given to all the sections of the society through inclusive growth. Fourth one was improving the basic capabilities of the individuals by means of giving importance to education and health. Next one was sustainable development. That is, whatever development goals are put forth or whatever development is achieved, it should be made more and more sustainable. So, inclusive growth here refers to which is growth distributed fairly across society and creates opportunities for all. It is attained by well-being, inclusion, sustainability and equal opportunities. Essential services access are to be made more accessible to the poor and empowering the poor through provision of education and health. Then coming to the previous questions, what were the previous questions that were asked? 11th 5-year plan identified the weaknesses on the employment front during the period of reforms, describe them, briefly discuss the main objectives and strategies outlined in the 12th 5-year plan of India, what is the scope for public-private partnership in post-economic reform period in India, explain the role of private sector after economic reforms, discuss briefly the guiding principles in setting up Niti Aayog, possible limitations in the strategy for poverty alleviation adopted under planning by the Government of India, explain intra-generational and inter-generational issues of equity from the perspective of inclusive growth and sustainable development. How are the principles followed by Niti Aayog different from those followed by the erstwhile Planning Commission? Comment on the challenges for inclusive growth, which include careless and useless manpower in the Indian context. Suggest measures to face these challenges. With this, we have come to the end of the topic, that is Indian economic planning, where we have seen what are the various objectives, strategies, what are the achievements of the Indian planning, critical evaluation, where we have said that no doubt economic planning was quite fruitful in attaining the set growth rates, but still the conditions prevailing in India says that still in the long run we are supposed to attain many more targets, and attainment of these many more targets are not now going to be done by the public sector only, but by means of public-private partnership. And the next important aspect is about the Niti Aayog and the Planning Commission. How the Niti Aayog has is an improvement over the Planning Commission, because the Planning Commission was totally a statutory body, but the Niti Aayog was an advisory body, a think tank, which is going to provide advices to the government And Planning Commission was a kind of dictator, where the policy formulation was done by the Planning Commission and later on it was discussed with the states. But the Niti Aayog includes the involvement of the states at each and every level of the policy formulation and implementation as well. So, with this we come to the end of today's class. Thank you for being with me. I am Dr. Pavani, subject expert on from Department of Economics, Government City College.